Hey, what's up, YouTube? It's Richie from Boston. It is the 4th of June in the year 2020. Now, I just uploaded a video like an hour ago that I did yesterday. And it was just me basically ranting about a bunch of things that apply. But check this out. I just watched New World Next Week with James Corbett and James Evan Pilato, because I watch it every Thursday morning. It's my source of news and my source of encouragement, to be perfectly honest. And you know what's strange? The chief executive officer of the World Economic Forum, Klaus Schwab, whatever his name is, you know, we just dealt with COVID and the director of the World Health Organization, and he basically ruled our world, right, for the last 6 months. Well, now, the World Economic Forum, the chief Bildeberger, the chief executive officer of the World Economic Forum, has just said publicly that this is a good time for a global reset. So with all this going on, their main concern is implementing Agenda 21. So we were right. And now they're basically telling you that, whether you know it or not.
Not a revolution. It's a blueprint for locking the nation down. This is fantastic stuff from John Whitehead, cross-posted over to activistpost.com. John Whitehead writes that anytime you have an entire nation so mesmerized by political theater and public spectacle that they're oblivious to all else, you'd better beware. Anytime you have a government that operates in the shadows, speaks in a language of force, and rules by fiat, you'd better beware. What is unfolding before us is not a revolution. The looting, the burning, the rioting, the violence, it pretty much makes an anti-revolution. The protesters, of course, playing right into the government's hands. James, as I've talked about this on very recent weeks here of New World Next Week, that's the one thing the government knows how to take care of, is when you get violent. The powers that shouldn't be want this. They want an excuse to lock it all down and throw the switch for just full-on martial law, not martial law light. They want a reason to make the police state stronger. Justice Department deploying federal prison riot teams to various cities. More than half the nation's governors are calling on the National Guard to quell civil unrest. Growing numbers of cities, having just barely emerged from medical martial law, are once again being locked down, this time in response to the growing upheaval.
A redirection, obviously, and what we are living through right now is a global transformative event that fundamentally is about a restructuring of the international monetary order and all of the economic ramifications that come down from that. One way that is going to manifest is in social unrest, and that's what we're seeing. So the reason that this feels so staged and rigged and phony is because clearly there is a switch that the media uses, and when they want to report on police brutality and make it an issue, they can flip that switch on and do so. But of course, they could do so on any given day, because there are dozens of such incidents every single day, day in, day out, week in, week out, month in, month out, year in, year out. But there are certain times when they flip the switch and the social unrest kicks in via various methods. And there are many people out there documenting the various trickeries that are going on, and CNN reporters being arrested live on air, and dramatic footage, and all of this kind of stuff that's going on. But fundamentally, this is about the great economic reset that is coming. Wow, does that sound familiar to anyone out there?
That's, yeah, it's coming even sooner than you might actually think, James. This is interesting. You make a good point, because this is kind of like, you talk about flipping on the switch of reporting on something that makes it seem like it's just an epidemic, kind of like reporting every health-related death and making people believe that it's a giant scamdemic that is, of course, breaking out. So, as you're basically teeing it up right on time, Brave New World Order minions all start moving their grand chessboard pieces. Of course, never letting a crisis go to waste, which I believe is the caption to the photo on the World Economic Forum website, which features the post, "Now is the time for a great reset." This written by Klaus Schwab, executive chairman of the World Economic Forum, and of course a Bilderberger who was even on their steering committee at one point. He writes, quote, "We need a great reset of capitalism." The Great Reset agenda would have three main components. The first would steer the market toward fairer outcomes. Depending on the country, these may include changes to wealth taxes, the withdrawal of fossil fuel subsidies, and new rules governing intellectual property, trade, and competition. The second component of a Great Reset agenda would ensure that investments advance shared goals such as equality and sustainability, rather than using U.S., EU, Asia funds, as well as investments from private entities and pension funds to fill cracks in the old system, which they do and will continue to do anyway. We should use them to create a new one that is more resilient, equitable, and sustainable in the long run. This means, for example, building green urban infrastructure and creating incentives for industries to improve their track record on environmental, social, and governance metrics. And they can improve those by, of course, lying about it and rigging up the numbers, as we reported many years ago about Volvo and the great, of course, emissions scandal. The third and final priority of the Great Reset agenda is to harness the innovations of the Fourth Industrial Revolution, which just so happens to be the name of this guy's book. And that's going to support the public good. During the COVID-19 crisis, companies, universities, and others have joined forces to develop diagnostics, therapeutics, and possible vaccines, establishing testing centers, create mechanisms for tracing infections, and deliver telemedicine. Imagine what could be possible if similar concerted efforts were made in every sector. End quote. Now, this seems like another situation where not only are there massive schemes and scams just in our face, it seems again like they're using coded language, just like they're using the phrase dark winter, as we discussed on our previous New World Next Week episode. So I found a couple of interesting, just very easy to find examples of the Great Reset being around for at least the last dozen or so years, kind of announcing it to us, right?
They are, and at any rate, I suppose I'm grateful that it is being put completely out in the open. They are not hiding it anymore. They are putting it on the table, because that is the next stage of the crisis agenda that we're living through right now. Once again, for people who don't know, this is a editorial by Klaus Schwab, who is the founder and executive chairman of the World Economic Forum, that has its fingerprints all over the COVID ginned-up crisis of the last few months, and is also, of course, host to the COVID Action platform that a lot of people have directed their attention to in recent weeks. So, I think this is an instructive little piece of... It's not even... I mean, it is propaganda, but in a sense, it is just putting it out on the table and putting it in black and white. And it's interesting how he does this in this article. I hope people will go and read through it in its entirety. But he starts by basically saying, we're in crisis, everything's falling apart. We must build entirely new foundations for our economic and social systems. The level of cooperation and ambition this implies is unprecedented, but it is not some impossible dream. In fact, one silver lining of the pandemic is that it has shown how quickly we can make radical changes to our lifestyles. Almost instantly, the crisis forced businesses and individuals to abandon practices long claimed to be essential, from frequent air travel to working in an office. I mean, this is social engineering 101 type of stuff that generally I would have to do some sort of propaganda watch to put it out on the table. You see, they're putting you through the crisis in order to re-engineer and society in the way that, well, he's coming out and saying it. This is the perfect opportunity for us to re-engineer society. And when you go through that reset agenda that you just laid out there with those three main components, it's all completely non sequitur. What on earth does any of that have to do with this COVID crisis that we supposedly just narrowly lived through?
Remember during the COVID epidemic that killed everyone you know and everyone you've ever cared about, and it gripped our nation, and the authorities finally saved us, and finally it's gone? Yeah, that's sarcasm. Do you remember when it first started and they started releasing criminals from prisons so that they didn't get caught with COVID? Which makes zero sense at all, but whatever. Well, I find it strange that they were releasing a lot of violent offenders, etc. Now we have rioting going on. It wouldn't be the first time that George Soros-funded organizations have given people like 3 strikes and you're out, giving them a second chance, doing things on social media or in the social system that helps push their agenda. One person comes to mind. There used to be a YouTuber called Professor Doom. that was exactly his circumstances. He was a 3 strikes you're out candidate, and he got released from prison only to make videos very similar to the ones that I make and others make. But he worked for Soros, and then he ended up doing something stupid and going back to prison or whatever. But I find it very strange that COVID was a hoax. It was literally, I mean, and the funny thing is the guy from the World Economic Forum states in his article, it's time for a global reset, which means new dollar, new world, new order, new world order, blah, blah, blah. He states in his thing, it's amazing how we just shut everything off. How everything, you know, airline flights, restaurants, people going to work, kids going to school, how all of that came to a sudden halt. Like I've told you numerous times, they expected a percentage or 3 of the population to stand up, and they didn't. So now the riots are forcing this. Do you understand? I mean, I'm guilty of it too. When I saw the cop kneeling on George Floyd for 10 minutes till he died, I couldn't believe it. I ran that. Everybody ran that. We live in a day and age where if you say words that somebody finds offensive, your videos are taken down. But yet, Twitter, Facebook, YouTube, they let everybody run what is shown to us as the murder of another human being. They let us run that ad nauseum, no problem, because it was part of the program. If you noticed, I put that video on unlisted because there's no sense in running it anymore. There's way too many things involved now. Do you know what I mean? The guy was a porn star. The guy is a Freemason. He was killed by a friend of his that he worked with for 17 years, etc. But long story short, everything we've been basically telling you about COVID, the lockdowns, all of this, the executive officer of the World Economic Forum just said the same thing. And out of all this, there's riots going on all over the world now because of this event. What they pull out of it, hey, good time to reset the dollar, good time to restructure the world the way we want it. You know what that means? I mean, I cannot stress this enough. You need to research this now while you can and understand what is coming. The elite, wealthy people of the world no longer need people to build them their roads, people to do all. They don't need workforces like they did, which is why workforces like they did, which is why they just literally got rid of 40 million people's jobs in the United States. See you later. You notice during the lockdown, the only stores that stayed open were the massive mega chains owned by the elites, who, by the way, also own the media. They also own everything. Everything we've told you about Agenda 21, the New World Order, Bill and Melinda Gates, all this, it isn't just hyperbole or conjecture. It's literally paperwork that you could go find for yourself if you're not too busy dicking around on Facebook and on all these other different time-wasting forums. You see what I'm saying? They literally just said the same thing we've been saying. They've basically kind of halfway told you that COVID was just a test to see how easily and quickly they could lock down the United States and the world. And they did. You know what I mean? And now they're going to lock down the world hard. I'm on Route 24 West in Kentucky. I've passed 2 Chinook military helicopters, the big twin blades, just sitting on the sides of the road, hovering. I got video of one of them, but I almost crashed my truck doing it. This is the new normal. I'm in the middle of nowhere right now, and there's military just absolutely everywhere. It's the new norm. What we expected to happen during COVID, well, they can't get martial law from a pandemic. You know, straight up hardcore boot on your neck or knee on your neck. Unless people rise up. Nobody did. Nobody did anything. Well, now they're forcing it, and they will have their martial law. They cannot take away everything you've ever known and loved about being an American without violence, and they're going to. It's coming. Everything that I have been supposing, the chief executive officer of the World Economic Forum and Bildeberger just said the same thing. So now what? Now what? I'm not living in the New World Order. He gave a few bullet points of what they want with this new world, this new reset. And one of them is vaccines. They are going to vaccinate the shit out of whoever is left here so that you never, ever pose a threat to them again. Not that we pose a threat now. It's amazing the amount of weaponry and technology and information available to every American right now. But if you actually look into real things like the World Economic Forum, the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation, ID 2020, you're a conspiracy theorist. How fucked up is that? If you know what's going on for real, other than the Kardashians, something's wrong with you.